Fact-checking is one of those sort of ubiquitous and all-encompassing activities that every news organization and any person who is trying to establish their credibility in the American political conversation undertake. But what if I told you that fact-checking, far from being this objective practice which helps us find truth, in many cases can actually push us further away from the truth and also underlies several important conceptual relationships, such as the relationship between power and truth, the relationship between facts and truth, and also the relationship between specialization and facts and bias in facts, all of which are oftentimes not understood well by the very people who claim to be fact checkers. In this video, we're going to explore how fact-checking has become a tool of the progressive political elite, and really anyone who seeks to have power over the narratives that we see in society, and we're going to do that by applying some basic philosophical thinking to the phenomenon of fact-checking, doing some background history, asking some important questions that oftentimes go unasked in our current day and time. But before we get into that, my friends, hope all of you are doing well. I'm Christian Watts. Thanks so much for being here. If you enjoy political and social commentary with a philosophical bent, then I must implore you, please like, share, comment, subscribe. Do whatever you can, my friends, to get this channel successful, because I believe we have a dynamite message, a message that will help a lot of people, and a message that will ultimately be conducive to the restoration of our republic. So thank you guys so much for being here. Like, share, comment, subscribe. If you feel led, don't feel compelled. But if you feel led, you can also donate to me as well. Thank you guys so much. Now, please enjoy the video. So, fact-checking, my friends, didn't just pop up in the past few years as the posting of this video, contrary to popular belief, but it became more prominent over the past few years. And we're going to actually explore a little bit why that happened. But fact-checking dates all the way back to the early 2000s, maybe even a little bit before that. And it was oftentimes undertaken by organizations such as the Associated Press or CBS News, things of that sort, who would analyze the statements a particular public figure or politician made and try to rate them on the basis of how much they conform to facts. Now, unfortunately, this approach actually came with a lot of different pitfalls. There were numerous times where the media, like the Associated Press and others, would actually simply say the opinions of a particular expert in the field are a fact and completely omit the opinions of people that may have had a countervailing thought to what those experts said. People like Glenn Greenwald, for example, back in the early to late 2000s, were incredibly critical with how the media handled certain sensitive matters, and were actually, if you want to use a Gen Z term, the OGs of calling out fact-checking for the flawed enterprise that it is. But we'll get into that in a little bit in a moment. But a lot of people oftentimes take fact-checking for granted. After the early 2000s, particularly after the election of Donald Trump to the presidency in 2016, something happened. Something that actually changed the course of the internet and the public square and how we consume information in this society forever. Something that so many people actually underestimate. Now, in 2016, I was in high school. I was 16 years old. I'm 24 now. And so I actually saw these changes happening in real time. Yes, I was as observant back then as I am now, because I was a very weird kid. Don't ask me why. It was one of my hobbies, watching these kind of things. But immediately after Trump won, many of you may remember the cardinal response of the Hillary Clintons and the John Podestas, especially John Podesta, was that misinformation, that magical word, was the reason Hillary Clinton lost her race to the presidency. In fact, John Podesta even went a little bit further than diagnosing the reason she lost, so-called. I think she lost because she was a horrible candidate, and America saw the kind of corruption that the Clinton family has been involved in, and they projected it. Different story, different day. He went on to say that social media companies have an obligation to monitor the kind of information and to assess the kind of information that is being passed around on their platforms. John Podesta's urging, and the urging of several other prominent political figures, including Hillary Clinton, led to social media companies employing teams of fact-checkers. And it led to an increase in the activity of fact-checking amongst the establishment media. After 2016, fact-checking became the operative term of so many news organizations. But also, what else became the operative term? What else became the operative term is that social media became the town square. If you were to look at a chart of statistics, and you were to examine how much social media played a role in impacting the previous 5 elections of 2016, you will see a gradual uptick in its impact. Many of you may remember, like during the dawn of social media era in the mid to early 2000s, the Obama girl was a very major force in pushing Obama to have cultural popularity, but more traditional vectors like Oprah and others were as well. Then you get to 2012. Advertisements became prominent on social media for political campaigns. But after 2016, social media became the dominant battleground of political campaigns and public conversation, and therefore it needed to be controlled or monitored to protect us from misinformation and disinformation. You will find that a few years after 2016, the word disinformation and misinformation, both of those terms, became words of the year in their respective years and became used more in popularity, because that is where the establishment was pushing. So, amidst all of this, fact-checking has become almost use a pun, a fact of life. And so many people take it for granted that fact-checking is actually a force for good. But what if I told you that fact-checking, how it is used now, and generally as a concept, when undertaken by institutions that have ulterior motives, or individuals who have ulterior motives and are not willing to check their motives at the door, is actually a detriment to truth? What if I told you even that facts themselves don't even equal the truth necessarily? What if I told you that facts could be manufactured and constructed to say a certain thing that may not actually reflect reality? What if I told you that facts are not even the most important aspect of one's epistemic journey to getting to the truth? Now, before I get into all of that, I have to set some ground rules here. Now, facts, my friends, what are facts? We have to define facts. Facts are merely details that we arrive at through a combination of two things: reason, our ability to think and process information, which belongs to the category of intellection, and observation, our ability to empirically observe things in the world. Now, this means that this rigorous combination has the ability to produce some reasonably good answers. But the problem with knowledge, and this is the fundamental problem with knowledge, is that nothing in this world is certain except that we will one day pass away. We can know that. But even today, in the age of AI and transhumanism, that may not even be certain, although I think trying to defy mortality as a natural law is going to end up causing a lot more chaos than those people in Silicon Valley think. Different video, different day as well. But so, facts necessarily, if we accept that facts are details that we arrive at by reason and observation, fact necessarily will change depending on what we observe and how we apply our mind to what we observe. So, for example, many years ago, and centuries ago actually, it was a fact that the universe was revolved around the Earth, that we had a geocentric universe. Then Copernicus and others, Galileo Galilei, came along and said, no, that's not true. Copernicus exposed it. Galileo built on his observations. Scientific revolution happened, and our scientific understanding became more refined, and a result of that becoming more refined downstream was advancements in medical science, the extension of human lifespan, and our ability to better tame nature to progress civilization. So, it's not that facts are useless. It's that facts sometimes are established things that one day say something and the next day change. This does not mean that facts are useless, that we cannot know anything. Of course not. But it does mean that things we hold as a fact today can indeed change. And we need to be as rigorous as we can in questioning the facts to ensure they are up to snuff with the best of our current understanding. If we allow facts to just be magical incantations spoken by a journalist or politician to be used in an argument to gather our assent, we will be doing ourselves a disservice, a massive disservice, both to our minds and to our society, which needs to have truth. Then we move on. Other things that were seen as factual, like, for example, using shock therapy to shock schizophrenia out of somebody, that also was ultimately deemed with the passage of time to be an erroneous way of dealing with the elements of the mind. So facts themselves, my friends, and this is one of the core issues I want to talk about, are not sufficient justification for truth. All matters of knowledge require justification. And what we have done in our current society in America, we have created a culture of fact-seeking without a corresponding habit of logical rigor or fact justification. And this, my friends, leads me to my 3 arguments against the phenomenon of fact-checking undertaken by the mainstream media and others in society who wish to push certain narratives. Number 1, fact-checkers often present counter-arguments under the veil of presenting truth. They oftentimes present counter-arguments under the veil of presenting facts. There was an article at a journalism institute that actually identified this quite well. And the article mentioned that back in 2009, there was a writer, Mark Hemingway, who wrote for the Weekly Standard, who fact-checked, for example, Sarah Palin. He was fact-checking Sarah Palin's claims on multiple things. And, for example, one of the claims that he fact-checked was Sarah Palin's claim that in her memoir she was beckoned by purpose rather than driven by ambitions. Now, why in the world would someone fact-check a personal statement like that? That kind of statement is one that kind of stands outside of the realm of what is objectively observable, as our original definition would say. In reality, that's within the realm of the self. And sometimes things that are within the realm of the self are not immediately apparent unless I reveal them to you. So if we're looking at this in the context of fact, we probably shouldn't, in this case, it is a fact that Sarah Palin said that. But he was trying to use fact-checking as a means to negate the idea that she was driven by purpose rather than driven by ambition. He then also does a few other fact-checks. He fact-checked, for example, Tim Pawlenty's claim that Obamacare is unconstitutional. Now, his fact-check said the following, quote, Obama's healthcare overhaul might be unconstitutional in Pawlenty's opinion, but it is not in fact unless the Supreme Court says so. Now, the truth is the Supreme Court has had a lot of different opinions on what is constitutional and what is unconstitutional. But the truth is this, the viewpoint that Hemingway just conveyed is not a factual viewpoint. It is a method of judicial interpretation called judicial supremacy, which says if the court says one thing, it must be so. That is not a method of judicial interpretation that many legal thinkers in America ever have endorsed, nor is it one that is inherently factual. It is simply one method of judicial interpretation that ultimately goes against the spirit of the American experiment. The courts are not the courts are not the ultimate authority on the validity of law. We ask them to interpret the law in coordination with broader first principles and the traditions and the text and letter of the law they're interpreting. If the courts deviate from that, they are therefore being unconstitutional. Their word does not make something unconstitutional if it's in the Constitution or if the textual nature of what is in the Constitution implies it. That's what makes it constitutional. But Hemingway used the fact check to negate someone else's argument by presenting it under the veil of the fact check. There are thousands of other examples, hundreds of examples of this very thing happening. Now, facts themselves, my friends, aren't, and this is me not next argument, it's not an inherent gateway to truth. Here's what I mean. If a fact is a detail that we gain through reason and observation, then that simply means the fact may be a useful aid in us finding the truth, but it is not the source of truth. Here's how I like to see it. Truth is a journey. It is, let's assume we're talking about a road here. You're on a road trip. Truth is the destination that you're trying to get to on your road trip. Facts are the waypoints on the map that are supposed to get you there. Those waypoints can be incorrect because that map may not have been choreographed well. That map may have been written in the 50s and you now need it 60 years later for it to be updated. That map may have so many different problems with it. But ultimately, the destination is the truth. So many pundits and journalists conflate being factual with being truthful, which is a severe problem that has made a lot of people vulnerable to incredibly bad arguments. Again, something can be a fact one day, and it can be rendered obsolete by further observation the other day. So you can't simply say the facts say X. We have to actually interrogate. Why do the facts say X? Are there countervailing facts? There are facts and there also are countervailing facts. And we have to have those two things clash if we're ever going to understand what we're actually doing. Now, I mentioned something similar. This is my third argument earlier in the video. We have created a culture of fact-seeking without fact justification. So many people are willing to cite a statistic or a study that says one thing, and then they'll throw it into your face and then pretend as if that is the absolution of that issue. That is the panacea of that issue. This is what I call the Ben Shapiro school of argumentation. Now, look, I'm not attacking Ben Shapiro. Many of you may like him. That's great. I'm not attacking him personally. He's a smart guy. But back in the day, that's what I was watching back in the day, like 2016. I don't watch it anymore. And that's what he was doing. That's all he would do. He would basically just stand up and say, hey, the facts say this, throw it at someone's face, and they'll be like, But if you have epistemic understanding, you will know what to do when that happens. You'll be able to say, okay, who did the study? Who conducted the study? What was the methodology of the study? Were there controlling variables that were left out? So on and so forth. That may render those facts questionable. Right? There's lies, damn lies, and statistics. That's the exact principle. But fact justification comes with the feeling, the aesthetic of being official. And people have been conditioned to believe if something is official, it must therefore be truthful, without realizing that something being an official thing is merely an aesthetic that we have assigned to an institution or a particular thing that, independent of further observation, means nothing. Absolutely nothing. So if we've established that facts are details that are produced by observation and reason, and that it's very good to have as many details as possible, i.e. as many facts as possible, and that no one fact establishes the truth, but facts simply help us get to the truth if they are conducted well, then we have to also answer the problem of motivation, of human motivation. Within the context of the media, it is impossible to ignore the ulterior motives under which certain things get fact-checked and other things do not get fact-checked. There are, for example, this is actually was a prime example of this at the presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Kamala Harris rarely got fact-checked, even though most of what she said was absolutely untrue. She said that, for example, that Trump supported Project 2025. Trump has disavowed that numerous times that said he does not support it, but she was not fact-checked by David Muir and the other journalists. Whereas Trump, every word that came out of his mouth, he was fact-checked. This is by design. This underlies the relationship between official facts and authority. Let's take a more recent example of fact-checking being abused in the form of NewsGuard. Now, many of you may not know what NewsGuard is, but it is the largest fact-checking organization in the United States to date. A lot of social media companies use its metrics and its data and its reports to guide how they have their own fact-checking policies, and they, under the auspices of fact-checking, have given outlets like CNN and the New York Times high credibility ratings, despite the fact that CNN is the one that published and ran the Jussie Smollett hoax, and also the fact that the New York Times was the one that wrote prolifically about Russia collusion fraud that never actually happened. Whereas several right-leaning outlets, like for example Fox and PragerU, they're all branded as risky or purveyors of information or disinformation. Here's the point. Regardless of if you believe the phenomenon of fact-checking itself is responsible for what people like NewsGuard does, the fact is, when you have, again, this official-sounding aesthetic belief in facts as these morsels of truth, and then you have those in power who can then use that, they will leverage it to their own ends, even if those ends are actually contrary to the pursuit of truth. If someone has a particular agenda to push, their primary goal is going to be to make you seem officially dispossessed. That is, to make you seem ignorant in light of what is official, because official is an aesthetic, and people associate official with true, and that association leads to deception. That is why they were fact-checking Donald Trump more than Kamala Harris, because it was clear they were trying to make him seem less official, and by proxy, make her seem more official by non-intervention, by osmosis. So if the people that are conjuring up the facts have ulterior motives, how can you trust they are applying the facts charitably and faithfully? Newsflash, you cannot. And this is the problem. When you have a establishment traditional media that is known to work with the FBI, look at Operation COINTELPRO, that is known to only selectively push certain things that those who fund them want them to push, that are known to edit out and filter out some of the most important concepts that may be presented with the story, that are known to treat the public as if they have an 8th grade education and write for dumb people. If you have a media that operates with that playbook, how can you trust the way they present facts will be any different? The truth is this, my friends. Facts are not enough to establish a standard of knowledge. To have a standard of knowledge, you must have a standard that will hold facts to account to what can be observed and what may disqualify those facts in light of future observation. But fact-checking assumes that the source of truth, the fount of truth, must be that detail that is verified by the National Institute of Medicine or that is verified by CBS or CNN. No. And the sooner we realize that facts are not magical morsels by which truth is conjured, the sooner we get a more critically thinking population. Now, I want to address one thing. In philosophy, there's something we call the fact-value distinction. The fact-value distinction, my friends, is this idea that we cannot extract moral values from facts, that we cannot make a moral statement objectively, that all morals are just, if they can't be extracted from facts, they are just subjective. The problem with the fact-value distinction is that it confuses a few things. Just because not all natural facts have moral implications does not mean that no moral implications are guided by natural facts. So, for example, my eye color is brown. That has no moral implication. Apologies if you're an Aryan thinker or whatever, but I'm sorry, that has no moral implication. But the fact that I have a mind that I can think and reason has significant moral implication, because that then therefore leads me to be able to comprehend justice, which then therefore should be able to lead me to conduct myself in a manner that apprehends the principle of justice. If I was, for example, mentally deficient, then I would be treated a different way by an ethical standard because my behavior is not held to the same normative standard that human behavior is held to. So facts can indeed help us be moral people. And in fact, moral facts are ultimately natural facts. They are naturally facts of our nature. But not all things that deal with our nature has to deal with morality. But again, people may mistake me to say, Christian, are you saying that facts don't matter? No. I'm saying that facts that are taken to a populace that does not critically examine them, and fact-checking as a tool of power, both of those things are dangerous for a free society. So I encourage all of you, my friends, think critically about these things. Don't let the facts be the ultimate activator of your agreement to a particular thing. Be a critical thinker. Use your reason. Know as many facts as possible. Test the facts against the standard of reason. And then move forward on that basis. And by doing that, I think we'll have a more informed and a better vigilant citizenry who can correct some of the excesses coming out of the institutions that currently dominate our society. My friends, like, share, comment, subscribe, do whatever you can to get the message out there. My friends, study history, study philosophy, remember more convicted, and please stay pensive.